Hey, when are you coming back? It's already been 8 months, so get your ass back here.
My ex-husband, who suddenly came to my parents' house, says such things to me with the same irrationality as ever. What is he saying now, after ignoring me for so long? I looked at my husband with cold eyes and said, "We are strangers to each other now. I'm married to someone else to begin with. My name is Daisy. I'm a 35-year-old office worker. My husband Jake and I have been married for 2 years. I met him at a blind date thrown by a friend. She was worried that I was working so much that I would never meet anyone, so she arranged for me to meet someone. Jake was at the party and we quickly became friends. I think it was good that he was proactive in talking to me. I'm not very good at romance, so I prefer someone who leads me. And Jake was 2 years younger than me and close in age, so we had a lot in common. We soon exchanged contact information and started dating. And after about a year of dating, he proposed to me and we got married. I was very happy that I was going to marry the man I loved. However, there are many things you don't know until you get married. First of all, he was a man who did no housework at all. He hardly ever did laundry or cleaned the house. Jake had lived at home all his life, but I thought he was still an adult and would at least have a chance to do the chores himself. Since he had no experience in housework, he had never cooked, and the last time he held a knife was in home economics class when he was in junior high school. Hearing this story made my head hurt. It meant that my husband was trying to let me do all the household chores because he was not able to do them himself. And so began my difficult days. I had to get up early every morning to make lunch boxes for the two of us and prepare breakfast for both of us. Then, when I came home from work, I hurried to prepare dinner. It is really hard work because I have to cook even when I am exhausted from work. I would like my husband to do other chores except the cooking. Can you do the cleaning and laundry? But he says,
I've never done it before, so I can't do it.
He doesn't even try. As if I were teaching a child, I told him, I'll show you how to do it, and we'll do it together. But, unlike a child, he is not so honest.
No, it's okay.
At first, I thought it was inevitable, but when I am busy with work, it is hard for me to take care of the housework. I was so exhausted, but one day Jake asked,
Have you been slacking off on the housework lately? I feel like the house is dusty, and the clothes I want to wear aren't washed. When I was at home, this never happened to me.
I was really upset when he said that to me. Then you should do the housework too. Your mother was a housewife, right? I work as an office worker, so I think it's obvious that I don't have much time to spend on housework. When I raised my voice, my husband also got angry with his eyes wide open.
What are you talking about, you spoiled brat? My mom was doing a decent job of housework, while also taking care of me and my brother. It must be easier for you without kids.
No, but...
Anyway, do your chores properly.
Why should I be told such a thing? I'm trying so hard to do my best. I've been making lunches and dinners with proper nutrition and balance in mind. Then let me cut corners on the cooking. I've decided to reduce the number of dishes little by little to lessen the burden on myself. I cheated by making the lunch boxes with more bread, and I started using frozen foods a lot. For dinner, I made more bowls of rice and made it simple. This made housework a little easier. I wiped the floors lightly in the morning and cleaned it all at once on weekends. In laundry, except for fashionable clothes, I run the dryer in the morning and put it together when I get home. My husband seemed to be satisfied with the cleanliness of the room for the time being and didn't say anything. And he never noticed if I'm cutting corners with lunch or dinner. If this is the case, I should have skipped out on things like this earlier. I could lessen the burden on my house chores, so I could focus on my work that way. For the time being, our life as a couple was fine, and we have been living together for 2 years. However, just recently, my husband started to complain again. It all started when I was packing up the plastic trash.
What's that?
What? My husband took the garbage bag from me and began to take out the contents. Wait, what are you doing?
Did you use this much of frozen food?
My husband said, pointing at the empty bags of frozen food.
I told you not to skip work, didn't I? What does this mean? If you're a wife, you should be making homemade food and serving it to your husband.
I was also angry at my unreasonable husband. I do all the housework, so you should at least let me reduce my burden like that. If you have a problem with me, I told you, you should do the chores too. I mean, it's been almost a year since I started using frozen foods, and you didn't notice any difference at all, which means your tongue was satisfied with frozen foods, right? You don't even know the difference in taste, so don't you dare talk like that. When I said this, my husband seemed to have lost his patience and choked on his words. He didn't think I had been using frozen foods for such a long time.
Shut up! I didn't think you were such a bad wife. Don't ever use frozen foods again.
My husband yelled at me and went to his office. He is really unreasonable. Or maybe he just doesn't feel comfortable unless he's the one telling them off. After 2 years of marriage, I realized that my husband was a guy full of useless pride. I was angry at myself for not realizing that when we were dating. Then, I decided to skip housework without hesitation. I would not be outdone by my husband. Then, I started bringing my own lunchbox that I had made the night before and giving my husband $5.
What the hell?
I'm fed up with you complaining too much. So from now on, please just take that for lunch.
Isn't it your duty as a wife to make a lunchbox?
There is no such obligation.
Don't be silly. I told you I won't allow you to neglect the housework, didn't I?
I don't care if you allow it or not, and if you don't like it, I won't give you that $5. When I said that without taking a step back, my husband looked frustrated and took the $5 from the table and put it in his wallet.
Make it $10 at least.
It was a little amusing to hear my husband say it that way, so the next day I decided to give him $10 out of our household budget. I was quite grateful to no longer have the burden of making lunch. After that, we had occasional fights like that, but I managed to continue my married life with my husband. Some may wonder why I am still married to such a person, but I don't want to go through with divorce so easily. It is easy to break up. But I don't think it's right to say goodbye to someone you love and got married to, just because you don't have the same values. We are both human beings, and no couple is perfectly matched. I think it is important to gradually adjust and tolerate each other's values in this way. With this in mind, I continue to live my married life with my husband. One day, however, my husband took an action that destroyed my thinking. It was out of the blue. "Welcome home," I greeted my husband, who always comes home a little later than I do. But there was no reply from my husband. I wondered if he didn't hear me. I thought it was okay and focused on cooking dinner. My husband changed from his suit into his house clothes and came into the living room and started watching TV while lying on the sofa. I was ready for dinner, so I put the dishes on the table and called him. "Dinner is ready." But my husband took his seat at the table without saying a word. and he started eating his food without saying anything. I felt bad, but I thought he might be in a bad mood because of something bad that happened at work, so I let it go. I knew that if I complained about my husband's attitude, it would only lead to a fight. However, my husband finished his meal and left the table without saying anything. As you can imagine, this made me angry. Can't you at least say thanks for dinner? And take away the dishes when you're done eating? I said to my husband, but he just walked into his room with a blank expression on his face. What in the world is going on? I muttered to myself in the living room. Then I took the dishes off the table and washed the dishes for the two of us. We hadn't been fighting recently, and I hadn't said anything to upset him. So I assumed it was something other than a domestic matter. However, when I said good morning the next morning, he ignored me. And when I said welcome home to my husband when he came home from work, he ignored me. Even when I tried to talk to him during dinner, he ignored me. This kept happening for a few days, and I became very angry. Why have you been ignoring me for so long? If there's something you're upset with me about, you should tell me. You need to have a proper conversation with me. I raised my voice like that. But my husband was in a cold mood and would not make eye contact with me. And eventually he went to his room without talking to me. He continued to ignore me for a week. I was getting tired of it and stopped talking to him. He never spoke to me, and I realized that we had not spoken to each other for about 2 weeks. I didn't know what he was upset about, and I was so fed up with him ignoring me like this that I began to think it was a hassle to cook dinner for him. Then one day, I decided not to cook dinner. When my husband came home from work, he looked at the dining table and saw that there was no dinner. He glanced at me. But he didn't speak to me, just got dressed and went out. What in the world is this? If this situation continues forever, it will be difficult to stay married. While I was thinking about this, I found the divorce papers in our drawer. To my surprise, the divorce papers were already signed by my husband. I thought to myself, so my husband is already thinking about getting divorced. At that moment, something snapped inside me. If my husband was so inclined, I should just submit the papers. I immediately signed my part of the papers and submitted them. Then I packed up my stuff and went back to my parents' house. My parents were surprised that I had a large package, but they heard what happened and were indignant. I then commuted to work from my parents' house. I never heard from my ex-husband. A week went by, and I still hadn't heard from him. So I figured that he no longer needs me. Part of me was a little sad, but a large part of me was angry. I'm going to forget about that guy. With that thought, I switched over and went about my daily life. Then, about 8 months after I left my ex-husband, he suddenly came to my house. At that time, I thought it was a delivery service or something, and opened the front door as usual. Then, I saw my ex-husband there. Huh? Why? When my ex-husband saw that it was me who opened the door, his eyes widened, and he got angry.
Hey, when are you coming back? It's been 8 months, so get your ass back here.
My ex-husband suddenly came to my parents' house and said such things to me with the same irrationality as ever. What is he saying now, after ignoring me for so long? I looked at my husband with cold eyes and said, "We are strangers to each other now."
What are you talking about? We are a married couple. Stop talking nonsense and get your ass back here.
You're the one talking nonsense. You had the divorce papers filled out and in your drawer. You signed them, and I filed them with the state office 8 months ago.
What? You submitted them?
Because you prepared it. You wouldn't leave it there, even signed, unless you were going to divorce me, right?
It was a scare tactic.
A tool of intimidation? I would think you were serious if you had filled out divorce papers after ignoring me for so long and ruining our relationship.
Well, that's because I took my boss's advice to keep ignoring you. He told me that since you were always talking back to me, the only way to get you to obey me was to ignore you thoroughly and wait for you to be obedient. And then he told me about the divorce papers, and that if I finally confronted you with them, you would apologize.
I was so disgusted. He's a lousy boss. And how is his married life going?
His wife and kids left him recently.
Of course, they would. And don't you think you deserve a divorce for doing the same thing? When I said this, my ex-husband looked uncomfortable. However, he seemed to still have a desire not to be outdone by me.
You're the one who's going to have a hard time now that we're separated. Considering your age and the fact that you have a divorce on your marriage record, you'll never remarry. So why don't you get back together with me? How about that? I'll make a special exception for you now. You don't want to be lonely, right? Don't be stubborn. Come back to me.
I decided to tell my ex-husband, whose brain is full of flowers, with a sigh. I'm married to someone else. My ex-husband looked surprised for a moment and then grinned.
Do you really think I would fall for such a blatant lie? You really are a terrible liar.
I'm not lying. Okay, let me show you the proof. I went to the bedroom and woke up my sleeping husband. My husband came to the front door with me in a sleepy state. My ex-husband was standing in the doorway, and his eyes widened when he saw my husband. This is my husband.
Oh, but you are... Ah, you are Daisy's ex-husband. It's been a while. How can I help you today? Did you really remarry this man?
That's what I said just right now.
Weren't you just childhood friends who live next door to each other?
He counseled me a lot after you broke up. That brought us closer and we got married. We know so much about each other.
Oh no. What are you doing here? It's early in the morning on a weekend. Oh no, I mean...
Now you know. I'm already starting a new life. If you say anything more or try to stay here, I'll have my husband arrested immediately.
I don't want that. I'm leaving. I'm not coming here anymore.
Then, get the hell out of here. I yelled, and my ex-husband rushed away from the place. My current husband and childhood friend is a police officer. He and I had been spending our school life together, and we knew each other's personalities very well. And when I got divorced, he went out of his way to come see me and listen to me kindly. He then confided in me that I was his first love, and that he had always had feelings for me. That led to us saying that we should get married because we knew each other so well, even if we just started dating. My husband was loved by my parents, too, and we were living together at my parents' house. That's when my ex-husband came in with no knowledge of what was going on. But still, the reason why my ex-husband kept ignoring me is so stupid that it makes me laugh. I'm really glad I got rid of such a lousy guy. And I heard from a mutual friend that my ex-husband was blamed for a mistake by his boss and was transferred to a rural area in the countryside. But it seems that he had been power harassing his juniors and there was no one to protect him. And the boss also received a pay cut and demotion from the company for causing another problem. But my ex-husband could not come back to the head office. On the other hand, my husband and I are spending happy days together, and I have recently become pregnant. Now we are all looking forward to our child together as a family. It is really terrible to keep ignoring Daisy. I think it is a really bad character of Jake to keep doing it when you know it will hurt his wife. I think your ex-husband should have been sanctioned more harshly. At any rate, I'm glad that Daisy was able to find happiness. I hope she continues to live happily ever after with her dependable husband.